Hey folks, welcome back to another HP Gaming GameLINK video. This is one that some people have started to ask me about the more we've provided this type of content. So today, I'm going to be delving into the entirety of what is a ridiculously extended universe and bringing you our beginner's guide to Dungeons and Dragons. Welcome back to the channel once again, folks. If you are a returning viewer, thank you very much for joining me once again. If this is your first time with us, thank you for joining me. My name is Matt, and we are destined, I'm sure, to become the very best of good friends. As I said in the tease, this is going to be a bit of a beginner's guide to Dungeons and Dragons, which is a newfound love for our family here. And I guess I just want to preface this by saying that this is a video, or I guess some content that's been requested by folks around the interwebs, folks local who are looking to potentially get into the hobby, and also just some folks out there who are like, Matt, I don't know where to begin. How do I start? What is this D&D thing all about that I'm hearing about so much? And that is why I thought, let's get in on the ground floor and let's try to create something, a bit of a, not a buyer's guide, not a how-to necessarily, but a bit of a beginner's where to start in how to get involved into the world's greatest role-playing game that's out there. And I'm trying to do this from a point of view as a new player, but also as someone who's a budding dungeon master as well. And I'll come to those obviously as we reach those points. So where do you begin? I mean, I've tried to break it down into a couple of different points, and I'll time code these as well as chapter points in the video. So if you want to look at a specific element, you can just skip ahead to that specific point by looking at the description of the video or the chapter points you can see from the little progression bar at the bottom of your screen. With that being said, folks, I just want to jump in and talk about some terminology first that I'll be referring to throughout the video, just so you know exactly what I mean when I say things like AC, etc. So by all means, stick around. Let's have a look at some terminology that you just gotta know. So when I talk terminology, what do I mean? Now, bear in mind, there is a ton of abbreviations and other things that you're going to need to know. I will talk about some of those later on, but these ones here are probably some that are designed, well, basically, things I'm going to be referring to in this video quite regularly. So I figured let's preface those, get those terms out there so you know what I'm talking about when I say things like PC, NPC, AC, and so on and so forth. A lot of C's. So if I'm talking about a PC, for example, I'm talking about a player character. So that is a character that you are controlling in-world, in-game, and you are controlling their actions and basically telling everyone else how they respond to certain situations where possible. An NPC, on the other hand, is a non-player character or a neutral player character who is a character that lives and breathes inside this world, but they're controlled by the dungeon master. They are someone who is not seated around the table, people you can interact with, like an innkeeper or something of the like, something of that ilk as well. DM is a term you are going to hear a lot of. A lot of other role-playing games will use the same terminology but have a GM or a game master. In Dungeons and Dragons, they are known as a DM or a dungeon master. Now, the dungeon master is effectively the referee, the overlord, if you will, the rules keeper, and just basically keeps you all honest as players as you move through the world of their creation, doing battle with monsters, interacting with NPCs, as we talked about before, all that sort of stuff. So the DM is the person who effectively runs the table. The PCs are the players playing at the table. NPCs are controlled by the DM as well, and they are effectively characters that are able to be interacted with, for lack of a better term. Another term you're going to hear a lot when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons is D20 or D number. And the reason I say D number is because any small letter D inside any of the written text refers to a dice or a die. of the value that precedes or follows on from that. So a d20 is effectively a 20-sided die, which is going to be your one and only major source of both joy and a lot of pain and suffering as well. The d20 is a frugal mistress, and she will punish you at every turn. Those of you who've watched the channel will know that I suck at dice games, and rolling d20s is no exception. There are d6s, d4s. A standard polyhedral set of dice for RPG games is 7 dice. You've got d4, d6, d8, d10, d12, d20, and a percentile dice or a d100. And those dice will effectively be, used in many different circumstances to get results. Whenever anything can be left up to chance, and the outcome is never certain. Other terms you will hear are things like race. Race is effectively the race that you'll be playing as a PC. So you may be playing a human, you may be playing an elf, you may be playing a turtle or a dwarf, or any other number of wonderful creatures that you can take on. And then you've got a class. Class is effectively your specialist ability. So you might be a barbarian, you might be a cleric, you might be a fighter, you might be a rogue, you might be a bard and just sing songs the entire time, which is incredibly entertaining. But those key terms are probably really important in terms of your character development when you're rolling up a new character. The D20, etc., all that sort of stuff's really important as well, because you'll be rolling dice a lot of the time. The other one you might want to remember is an AC. An AC is classified as armor class. Now, armor class is effectively how much damage you can withstand before you actually are dealt damage to yourself, how much of a beating you can take before you start to take damage. So if your character has an AC of 15, anyone rolling attacks against you on their D20 needs to roll a 15 or more in order to do damage to you. And of course, there are effects and other things that can modify that up or down, depending on the situation you find yourself in. Those are some of the key terms there. As I said, there is plenty of other terminologies, stats, that sort of stuff that we can talk about, but those are the ones that I'll probably refer to the most as we work through the video, and hopefully you'll be able to understand by jumping back and forth if need be, if you forget. Now, I guess moving on from here, what do I need to play Dungeons and Dragons? At its core, Dungeons & Dragons can be played very simply with not a lot, to be perfectly honest. You will need one of these, pencil preferred, and an eraser, obviously, to make changes. A character sheet, which looks like this, which has been sort of pre-filled. This is Brash Manderson, and he is a fighter, lawful neutral. He has 207 experience points, so he's nearly at level 2. And then, of course, you'll need a huge chunk of polyhedral dice. Now, I've got more than one set in here. There's D20s. That's one of those D20s I was talking about before, that fella there. You'll need a huge chunk of those dice. You can get away with just 7, but as most D&D players will tell you, seasoned D&D veterans will tell you, you can never have too many dice. But that's basically it. If you get access to the basic rules as well, if you want to read them, that's all you need to get started. If you are being a player character, that is. Now, if you're a player character, you need a character sheet, pencil, eraser, dice, some knowledge of the basic rules, but that's not essential, because if you're a player character, you can effectively refer to your DM to be the umpire and basically just play, and they will guide you through the process. That is the DM's role. That is what they are there for. They are not there to work against you. They are there to help guide you and help you do whatever it is you want to do in that world. Pretty much, yeah, you can let the host deal with the rules and everything else you've got going on there as well. Now, I've talked about having character sheet, I've talked about having pen, dice, all that sort of stuff. Because this is 2022, you can also jump online and get yourself a free D&D Beyond account. Now, the D&D Beyond account is effectively, or D&D Beyond is a tool set, a digital tool set that allows you to have all of this on one screen at your fingertips at the click of a button. It also means that instead of having to physically have 150 different dice on the table, I just rolled a nat 1. That's very bad. You can roll them digitally, which means you can play literally anywhere, anytime, no matter where you are, no matter what you set up, and you'll have access to a complete Dungeons & Dragons suite, all the dice you'll need to roll, all of your character abilities, the works, without having to bring anything with you. And that's kind of awesome. Although, as I'm a tactile gamer, I do like to have the dice physically rolling, but then you've got to do the math as well and work out the different bits and pieces. D&D Beyond will do all the mathemagics for you, and it will just pop up on your screen and is shared with your DM as well, so you don't need to shout out the result. Yeah, pretty much play it anywhere, anytime. That's probably what you need, but let's talk about where to start. Okay, so you've got all the gear. You've got your D&D Beyond account, you've created a plethora of characters, you've got 100 million dice, you've got all this gear. How do you start playing D&D? If it's just you on your own, it's very hard to play, so you'll need to find a game. Best way to do this is to sometimes just find some like-minded players. A lot of gaming pubs or gaming stores, FLGSs, will have some sort of role-playing group that you can come along and join. I will say too, some season parties that play together on the regular can be a little bit abrasive of newbies trying to join their ranks. So do be careful, don't just rush. I mean, be polite about it, but don't just rush into a core group that's sitting around the table, locking down and obviously in combat, and then say, hey guys, can I jump in? Look, sometimes that may work and you may be able to jump in, but the best way to do it is to find a group of like-minded individuals who are not currently running a campaign or are ready to start another campaign and do something different, and just say, look, can I jump in? Can I be shown the ropes? The other way to do this now is there is a website called startplaying.games, and you can actually find dungeon masters or game masters for hire to run games for you. I admittedly myself am on Start Playing, and you can actually book me for your sessions as your dungeon master as well, and I'll be able to run you through introductory sessions, games and worlds of my own creation, along with a couple of one-shot campaigns too. So finding a game has never been easier. You can always jump on D&D Beyond and have a look and put a post out there and say, hey, look, I'm new, I'm looking to start, how do I begin? But chances are someone you know somewhere is going to be involved in Dungeons & Dragons in some capacity. So if you can get a party together, you should be able to sit down and find a way to play. Bear in mind, if you're rolling up a character for what we call a session 0, allow sort of half an hour to the character creation, and then for your first session, maybe 2 to 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours if you expect it to be a larger group of people. Probably I would suggest running a game with 2 PCs, 2 to 3 PCs, allow 3 hours. Anything more than that, I'll allow 4 hours per session. It sounds like a long time, but trust me, there is a lot to get through in these D&D sessions that you play. Speaking of playing, how do we do that? So you found a party, you found a game, you're sitting down at the table, you're gathered together, whether it's Zoom or otherwise. How do you play Dungeons & Dragons? Effectively, as I explained to a lot of folks, I just refer to the core mechanics that are listed in the basic rules. And it's very simply, 1, the Dungeon Master will describe the environment that surrounds the PCs. 2, the players describe their actions and how they want to behave or interact with the environment, the scene that's presented before them. Then, of course, the DM narrates the results of their actions and their die rolls, if any. Then we go back to step 1 and repeat. That's it. So I guess it sounds quite simple and it sounds almost boring. Basically, you just sit around and talk to each other. It's much more involved than that. So at its core, the DM will say, okay, you stand at the mouth of a cavern looking in, there's an inky blackness that is approaching from you, and there's a foul smell that starts to affect your nostrils. No one in your party has dark vision, so you can't see beyond 5 foot into the depths of the cave. What would you like to do? The players can then talk amongst themselves. The PCs might decide, oh, I'm going to do something here. I'm going to try this. Oh, I'm a wizard. I'm going to launch Firebolt and see what I can cast. So in that instance, the DM will say, right, you want to cast Firebolt. Okay, Ivy, I'll get you to roll your damage attack. Roll a d20 for me and check your Arcana score. So Ivy will have a look at her character sheet, find Arcana, roll a d20. She has a +2 to her roll as a modifier. Basically, she'll tell the DM the result. In this case, she rolls a 3, and the DM will, based on that information, narrate the result of that roll. In this case, so Ivy, you cast a firebolt and it goes straight through. It hits a wall almost directly opposite, probably 10 feet away, and you can see the cavern bends to the left into the darkness. What do you want to do next? So again, we've gone back to step 1. The DM has narrated the results of the action and then set up the next scene. The PCs now have to decide if they're going to venture into that cavern, and who knows what lies in store. So at its core, D&D is effectively a storytelling narrative, and if you bring improvisational skills and a sense of adventure and a sense of not really worrying too much about the content you may or may not come up against, you're going to have a great time with this. If you're a shy individual, someone who doesn't necessarily, a bit introverted, I guess, for lack of a better term, don't fret. You can be led by the other PCs. By all means, the DM will make sure, a good DM will make sure that everyone has a say and everyone gets some sort of turn to do something awesome and heroic. That is what DMs are there for. Speaking of DMs, how do you find one? How do you become one, if that's your thing? So we touched on this before, finding a DM. Sometimes this can prove to be very tricky. A lot of DMs, if they are seasoned in 3 or 4 different campaigns on the go, don't necessarily want to take on a lot of work. One of the best ways to find a DM is to jump on message boards, jump on other platforms. Startplaying.games is probably one of the forefront game master or dungeon master finding places to find and search for dungeon masters, and you can see their rates, how much they charge, what they bring to the table with them when they game, if they can physically meet up with you in person, what sort of equipment they bring, whether it's minis, extra books, all that sort of cool stuff. But what if you wanted to run the table? What if, like me, you're a great teacher and you want to be able to sit down and play games and bring people into this hobby? You want to bring people into the fold. How do you become a DM? It's easier said than done. If you've never played before, it can be very tricky to just jump in and become a dungeon master. If you're looking to become a DM, there are a lot of resources out there on the interwebs, Dungeon Masters Guild, D&D Beyond itself. The basic rules, all that sort of stuff will help you understand the core mechanics of what it means to be a DM. Again, those same core concepts that we talked about before, the rule of those 3. DM describes the scene, PCs interact with the scene, DM describes the results. That still applies and is still very true. So if you've got the ability to improvise, because who knows what the PCs are going to do, then chances are you'll be a great DM. And the starter kit, starter set, the essentials kit, they give you some DM-friendly adventures along with a lot of pointers on how to run those adventures in order to become a better dungeon master. And that's probably a really good place to start. If you open up a starter set and you're looking through the contents, you're going through the book, it even says in the Lost Mine of Phandelver starter set, if you're reading this book, chances are you're the best candidate for a DM. Simple as that. And that book, that adventure will literally be led, it has a lot of hand holding for that adventure, but it does allow you to bring your own embellishments. Now, I have run the Lost Mine of Phandelver 6 times, and it has been a very different outcome every time we've run it, because the PCs will do different things depending on their own individual personalities, which they then put into the characters they play. So being a DM, I find, someone asked me, do you prefer being a DM or do you prefer being a player character or a PC? I think I prefer being a DM only because, one, I want to bring more people into this incredible hobby of mine, but I also enjoy playing. I've played with Charlotte as a PC and watching her face with delight when she rolls a natural 20 on the dice, or she, effectively, launches a firebolt or completes a campaign. She completed this epic campaign, which I started off as a bit of a joke to see how much she'd really enjoy it. And it's now become this epic 5-scenario, 5-session campaign culminating in an epic battle on the top of a volcano. It's just fantastic. It's fabulous. And being able to create that and watch her play through that world that I've created for her, there's something very satisfying about that indeed. So if you're thinking about becoming a DM, it is a lot of work, but the reward is worth it in some cases as well. Now let's talk about what happens beyond all of this. You'll become a DM, you've got a party together, you've played your first session, you've done your first little sort of foray into Dungeons and Dragons, and you've played out a lot of introductory stuff. Where do you go from there? What lies beyond? So you've played your first session, you enjoyed it, you want to continue the campaign, the DM you've got there has befriended you and said, yeah, sure, come back next time, we'll do another session next week. But beyond that, where do you go from there? Now, if you want to go beyond the basic rules and you really want to get into your PC knowledge, you want to build a new character with a new race, class, test out different builds and combinations of different heroes you can create. The core books, there's 3 core books and rule supplements that you can turn to. As a PC, probably the most important one is this one, the Player's Handbook. Now, the Player's Handbook includes all the races, classes for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons rules. It includes different tables you can roll up for backstories and reasons you're existing in the adventure in the first place, character history, flaws, feats, so much content. It is a heavy book. It's a huge book, but it gives you a lot of knowledge that you wouldn't otherwise have to help you build your characters and be the best they can possibly be. It even talks about playing them slightly as evil characters as well, if that's your thing. If you're training to be a DM or you're a budding DM, the Dungeon Master's Guide, which is this one up here, is for you. It talks about how to create worlds, what gods that might be around in the lands in the realm of Faerun, or the Forgotten Realms, I should say. It talks about different planes of existence, multiversal, all sorts of bells and whistles. There is literally anything you can think of as a starting point for an adventure will be in that book, and that will help you set up that scene, set up those places, set up the world from, a tiny little village into a sprawling city, into something else, into a continent, into a whole planet, if you will, if you want to go that far. And that will help you with your world building, with your setting up of your political factions within that realm, etc. If you want to go that far, there is so much information. And if you're playing as a DM, or if you're constructing a world as a DM and you find the monsters and the basic rules are a bit, I'm over it, you can always turn to where is it? The Monsters Guide, which is in here somewhere. The Monster Manual, and that will help you populate your world with all manner of nasties for your PCs to run into, fight with, engage, or effectively move stealthily by. So there is a lot of content for D&D just in those 3 core books alone. If you're only looking to be a PC, Player's Handbook is the way to go. You won't need anything else. If you're looking to be a DM, Dungeon Master's Guide is going to have a lot of stuff there for you. You only need the Monster Manual if you really want to push the envelope in terms of your creatures and wonderful nasty things you can put against your PCs. In addition, beyond that as well, there are adventures that you can purchase too. So you could effectively have a look at Hoard of the Dragon Queen, for example, which is a special adventure book for characters of levels 1 to 12, I believe. And effectively, that's a 2-parter. It starts with Hoard of the Dragon Queen and finishes with The Rise of Tiamat, which is about a giant dragon that has been pulled from the void, and the crazy factions that are effectively trying to bring about the end of the world with this dragon. It's epic, 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 and it will give you a complete list of exactly how the adventure would run. This is also true of the starter sets that we talked about before. This one here is the starter set containing the Lost Mine of Phandelver. That is a 4-part adventure. A couple of times I've played it, I've stretched it out to 6 sessions as well, because that's just what happens. The PCs will do what PCs will do. And sometimes I can draw it out. Also comes with character sheets and sets of dice as well. The Essentials kit, which is here, has another adventure in it, the Dragon of Ice Spire Peak, and that is more arbitrary or ambiguous, I'll say. It's not structured. Phandelver, there's specific prompts that will actually prompt your PCs to move from place to place, whereas the Essentials kit is a bit more free form. There's a job board the characters can go to, and they can effectively go to each location as they see fit. They don't have to follow a set path, which also means too a lot of variety, but it does require a lot more preparation by the DM. Again, 2 sets of dice in that box, along with character cards, ability cards, item cards as well, and also initiative turn order cards for when you're in combat, so you know whose go it's going to be next. The other starter sets, there's also this one here, the Dungeons & Dragons starter set for Stranger Things. Now this one comes with a couple of minis as well, comes with a basic set of dice and a very simple adventure that was written by Mike Wheeler from Stranger Things, The Quest for the Thessal Hydra. And it's a simple adventure that will get you into it, but it's a one-shot that effectively could be played in about a 4-hour session. So it's not as involved as the other starter sets or the Essentials kit, but it will still give you a very good meaty adventure that you can get through in just one session, which is very cool. On top of that, there are about 40 different books you can purchase, ones that include source material or rule supplements. So this would be things like a Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide here, which talks about the Sword Coast, which is in the Forgotten Realms, a whole plethora of information about that world, that place, those villages contained therein, factions in that area to help you develop your story as a DM, give you launching points, that sort of stuff. It also has character options for PCs to develop further their characters, give them race and class options as they build new characters. And of course, there's more adventure core books as well. There is, of course, this big bad boy as well, the Curse of Strahd revamped, which is probably one of the most popular modules or adventures you can run. Curse of Strahd is effectively an epic campaign, sprawling over many sessions in a freeform world called of Barovia, and effectively the characters are trying to eliminate and destroy the evil vampire lord Count Strahd. Yes, epic. Absolutely epic, and it's something that will start characters at level 1 and take them all the way through to level 12. Lots of gothic horror in that as well, so it's obviously going to keep everyone on their toes. And yes, I think that's the other thing too. If you're a DM and you're starting out, please be nice to your PCs early on. Don't just run them into a battle with a dragon when they're level 1, because level 1 characters are very squishy and will die off quite easily, and no one likes to just be killed repeatedly. So please make sure you give them a health potion or two. It's interesting to note too, all the content we have just talked about is also available digitally on D&D Beyond. So you'll be able to effectively jump on board, grab digital copies of all that, and have those resources at your fingertips if you're playing online. Last year, because we were in lockdown, I played through multiple sessions of Phandelver online via Zoom, via Discord. We did a couple of Halloween one-shots of my own creation as well. So, there's a lot to be said for online gaming as well. But hopefully, with all that information, with all those product knowledge that I've just given you and a ways to start, hopefully that gives you an idea and a launch pad to jump into the world of Dungeons & Dragons. We are hoping to get some live plays done. Charlotte is itching to show you her skills at Dungeons & Dragons. She is very clever, very silly, and it has been an absolute joy to play through different campaigns with her. She's currently playing through Lost Mine of Phandelver with me, and so hopefully we can bring you up to speed on that adventure as it unfolds. If you have any questions about Dungeons & Dragons, where to start, please by all means pop them in the comments below. I will get back to you. I promise that I will get back to you as soon as I get a chance. If you have any requests on Dungeon Masters or how to become a DM, or would like some tips, by all means please let me know in the comments below, or you can reach out to me at orders@hpgaming.com.au, or you can find me at Matt the GM on startplaying.games as well. And who knows, I could be hosting your next D&D session or your first D&D session. More than happy to lend a hand. But that's it from us, folks. So hopefully you found that useful. Hopefully if you are a D&D veteran, you've recognized everything I've said and you would agree with me, hopefully. If not, hey, it's my own opinion. These are my experiences with D&D, and I'm just here to impart a bit of knowledge for those who are looking to get into the hobby. If you are just starting out as a PC or just starting out as a budding DM, I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, by all means, give it a like, hit that subscribe button, and stay in touch so you can see all the new D&D content we're posting whenever we put up something new. Until then, folks, I need to give mad props to all of our Patreon subscribers. A lot of those folks are D&D players, and we actually ran some campaigns specifically for those guys. So thank you very much for your wonderful support. We appreciate that very much. Much love. For those of you who are returning viewers, once again, thank you so much for watching. We appreciate it very much. Your support is always wanted, and very thankful for that. Other than that, folks, get back to the table, play lots more games, look after each other, and make sure you keep rolling those natural 20s. We'll see you back at the table for more awesome tabletop and board game content very, very soon. Until then, it is bye for now.